I got her a new little bed to go on the shelf she normally wants to curl up on when I'm in here. That way she's on a spot that's actually meant for her instead of on fabric and supplies. And I just convinced her to go check it out 2 days later. And she immediately started making biscuits. Hi. Is that a cozy bit? Hi, baby. Good girl. Hey, it's Alirien, and today, or rather this evening, as it is almost 7 p.m., we are starting on the final piece of Sybil's skirts, which is her overskirt. It did occur to me as we started the 4-part that we were about halfway through the main garb. After the bodice and the sleeves, we'll get to move on to accessories. So very exciting stuff. But yes, we are starting the overskirt because the 4-part is basically done. All that's left is the hem, but we're not hemming that until we hem the overskirt because we have to do those at the same time. The overskirt essentially goes together like the underskirt, except there is no front panel because it clasps in the front and is open in the front to show off the 4-part. It is comprised of 4 triangular shaped pieces called side gores. There are 4 rectangular panels, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. The 2 in the back will meet to form a center back seam. The 2 in the front will not meet except at the waistband with a hook closure. It took me far too long studying this pattern to figure that out, but now that I have it in my head, I know how it goes together. There is also a waistband, 9 pieces in total, and that is not counting any of the notions, there it is, which includes 2 hook and eye sets and some heavy button or upholstery thread. I don't know if I have upholstery thread. I might need to run and grab that, which might have to wait until after the storm because, as I said, it's just about 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and the storm's landfall is now anytime between noon and 4 tomorrow afternoon, depending on how quickly the storm moves toward the coast and whether or not it speeds up or slows down as it continues to gain power. They're actually currently estimating that it might hit Category 2 before it makes landfall, so we will see what happens. At the very least, I think the upholstery thread is just for doing the pleats at the waist. There are 2 options for the pleats. You can either knife pleat or cartridge pleat. Cartridge pleats, I believe, are the more period appropriate treatment. I have never done them before, but I think I'm going to give them a go for the sake of this. They have to be hand sewn, so we will see what happens there. But I believe that is what the upholstery thread is needed for, since cartridge plates are very thick and very dense. In order to hold them properly, strong thread is what you need. I do also need 1.5 yards of 20-inch wide fusible or sew-in interfacing. I have plenty of interfacing, I'm not worried about that. On the 2 front edges that split open to show the 4-part in the middle, you attach interfacing on the inside and fold the raw edge in and stitch that down. And you've got the interfacing there to keep that edge nice and sturdy. It does also say to hand sew it unless you're going to be adding trim along that line to hide your stitching, then you can machine stitch it. I'm definitely adding some embellishments there, so we're just gonna use the machine to make it go a little bit faster. And I don't actually know what the width of my fabric is. I will pull up its web listing to double check that. But there's layouts for both 44 inches with or without nap, either a directional fabric that you need to pattern match or a piled fabric like velvet. If I feel the need to pattern match, I will figure that out. So we will see what happens there. As long as I have enough room to also cut out one of the 2 sleeve types, then we should be fine. I am definitely doing a mock-up for this one. The 4-part was easy enough that I really didn't need it, but this is something that's going to be affected by size, by length, and so on. We're gonna do a muslin mock-up first. My muslin's in the other room. I'm about to go spread out and cut out the pieces for this. I suspect my muslin is not the same width as my final fabric though, so we will see what shifts need to happen. But yeah, I'm definitely going to do a mock-up at the very least so I can practice the cartridge pleats and see if I can nail that down. There's an optional... Hello? Ma'am. Meow. A cat snuck in here and is hanging out down there. There is an option to make slits in the side of the skirt in order to reach anything worn underneath. I think I will opt to do this. so that Sybil can have some sort of a pocket underneath her overskirt. I think she will appreciate that, so I will probably do the slit option. I'm glad there are instructions for this. This is the one where it's really important that it hangs overnight before hemming to make sure that it does all of its stretch. It says to hang the garment for at least 24 hours to allow any bias sections to stretch with gravity. And I need to make sure that this one brushes the ground. So let's go set up in the other room. Where's the section that tells me where to pleat? Oh, does it not give me this information in here? I don't like that. I might use heavyweight interfacing inside the waistband to make sure it's strong enough. Oh, there it is. Following directions and technique manual, apply cartridge pleating stitches. So it doesn't talk about that until after the waistband instructions, which... Oh no, there it is. Okay. This is fucking better. And following directions and technique manual, which I do have printed out separately, apply cartridge pleating stitches, leaving 4 to 6 inches unpleated at each side of center front. And then it skips straight to sewing 2 sets of large hooks and eyes to the waistband at the front opening. It never tells me how to put the waistband on. Now, I know how to put a waistband on a skirt, so I'm not worried about this. But it has you prep the waistband, and then it jumps from doing the cartridge pleat stitches and the pleats to putting the hooks on the waistband. Unless I missed a page in printing this, but the page numbers don't skip, so I don't think so. I'm annoyed. Okay, let's go spread out and cut the muslin, and we'll figure this out from there. Been a little bit. I got real busy with the couple of projects for Mabon for the autumn equinox and getting those filmed and ready for everybody. Then I just was absolutely tanked for energy. I will not lie. This has to get done. So we're gonna trudge forward. I am not going to be interfacing the mock-up because the first step is to apply strips of interfacing to the 2 front pieces that form the split where the forepart is visible. But I am still doing the folds. So I have folded over the front edge by 5/8 of an inch and pinned it down, and I will stitch it, and then I will fold it another 3 inches over and stitch it again, because the strip of interfacing that goes on the front is supposed to be set 5/8 in, and you fold that raw edge over onto the interfacing, and then you fold the whole strip of interfacing, which is 3 inches wide, over again and stitch that down, ideally by hand, unless there will be embellishments covering the stitching, which is what I'm going to opt to do. We're going to stitch down the 5/8 line and then the 3-inch line and do it again on the other front piece. I apologize for the lighting not being great. My ring lights are in the other room and this lamp burned out its bulb and I just haven't gotten around to changing it yet. I have stitched the first 5/8 down. You can see the stitching line on the outside because I have a brown bobbin right now. So now we're going to fold this another 3 inches over and stitch it again. Next, we put the side gores, or 2 of the side gores, onto the fronts and stitch down that edge. So that's what I'm doing now. One option that I have is to make essentially pocket openings like I did for Alice in between the front and the front side gores. That step is listed after it tells you to stitch the gores on, so I have not done it for the mock-up. I will try my damnedest to remember to do it for the final version, though I'm actually debating putting the openings in the side seam between the gores rather than toward the front. We will see, but that just, I don't know, maybe it's my modern brain, but that feels like the slightly more natural natural placement. I suppose we'll have to see where the seams fall once it's gathered. So, but that's another reason it was actually better that I skipped it this time. But the next steps are to put the side back gores onto the center back pieces and then sew up the center back seam. The next thing you will see will be the center back seam being pinned and stitched. And now we do the two side seams with the left and right side gores together. The next thing is to fold down the top waist edge 2 inches to the inside and stitch that down. Or no, it's just a fold, which is to prepare it for doing the cartridge pleats. So I'm gonna lay this out and mark 2 inches all the way down, fold it, and pin it. And actually, it's almost midnight, so I think I will leave that for the morning. But so far, we have all of the skirt panels, except for the waistband, connected. Let me dip this down ever so slightly here. There we go, that's a slightly better angle. So we have whole skirt. I'm gonna go pin this on the form and see how it looks and leave it there overnight, and in the morning we will fold it down and start cartridge pleating. Yay! Here is the overskirt mock-up, just pinned and folded at the waist over the rest of the skirt layers, and already I love it so much. I cannot wait for this to be properly pleated in that beautiful blue material I'll be working with. It is thicker than the muslin, so it will look much, much fuller. I am debating cutting the panels longer or making the fold shorter. Well, I don't know, because the front is coming down to about the same spot where the forepart is. The back is just brushing the ground, though it's doing this thing here because I do only have it folded. So I will wait till it's pleated to really decide on that front, but I have it in my head that I might cut the side and back sections longer. I might tack an extra 2 inches onto them just to be sure that the folding of the waist doesn't make the skirt too short at any one point around, because the overskirt needs to be the longest section. But we will get this pleated tomorrow and then decide. This is where I stop for the evening. I'm gonna sit down and watch some videos for a little bit and relax, hang out with my CP puppy, and I will see all of you in the morning for some cartridge pleats. Somebody stole my chair before I could come get started, so I figured I would leave her here and just start with her front and center. You took a page out of your sister's playbook. You're a seat thief now. You're awful comfy, but I need my chair. If you follow any of my social accounts, I posted in several places that Jerome, my sewing machine, decided yesterday, as I was finishing up this mock-up here, he is tired of my shit and needs a break. We brought him to a local place called All American Sew, Vac and More. He said it'll probably take about 2 weeks. So I should have my machine back by Maker Faire. That said, for now, we are going to be cutting out fabric, so you will get to see the very, very pretty Sybil fabric. Yeah, we're gonna do as much work as we can that doesn't need a sewing machine. And then once we get to the point where I absolutely need a machine, I will pull out my grandmother's machine to start working through that until such time as I get Jerome back, and then I can really power through, because Jerome is a more powerful machine because it's a newer machine. We're gonna be cutting out the fabric for the overskirt. I need 2 strips of interfacing. Well, 3 strips if you count the waistband, but I'm also gonna be putting a thicker, very stiff material in the waistband. It's almost gonna be a straight up belt. Someone was trying to climb on the nice fabric, and it's the one fabric I will not let her get on top of, because you play Velcro on everything. We're gonna start by drafting a better waistband because I don't like the very narrow waistband that the pattern actually works with now that I've done the mock-up. This is the mock-up for the overskirt. So the way it goes on, even though I do not have any of the foundational garments on, so it's not gonna fit me correctly, but it wraps around the back and there are 2 hooks that connect the waistband in the front. And of course, it's way too long on me right now because there's supposed to be a hoop skirt and a bum roll and a petticoat that are pulling this out. So it actually stands like out to here with all the foundational garments. And then the waistband is only an inch wide right now, so that is why I'm going to make a wider one so that it's going to be a little bit sturdier and provide a bit more structure. And then it is cartridge pleated, my first attempt at cartridge pleats, which didn't go as badly as I anticipated, but I am going to redo how the cartridge pleats are done from how the instructions state to do it. Just because I feel like the length of stitch it calls for in her instructions is too big, and it makes the pleats too large and too deep. So I'm gonna make more smaller and shallower cartridge pleats, and I think that will look better in the final fabric. I was iffy on the finished version of it, but now that I've seen it on Sybil over everything else, I'm pretty happy with it. Hi, Chica. You came back. Your bed is here. Or I can move the gator and you can have the basket. Yeah, you want the basket? She's decided the basket is appropriate. All right, then I'll put the gator in the bed. But we are drafting just a very simple straight rectangle. So not much that's actually being drafted there. I need 3 inches. Actually, I need 4 1/4 pencil. And it's actually sharp, wow. That's 24. I need 33 1/4. Quarter. The reason I'm doing these weird measurements is I'm trying to account for the seam allowance as well and actually have the seam allowance worked into the pattern piece, which is unusual for me because normally I will draft my patterns net and estimate seam allowance when I cut it out of the fabric. Are you ready to see this gorgeous material? Isn't this stuff so pretty? Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Trying to make sure the selvages are lined up as precisely as possible here. I am going to cut this. Hi. Hello. Can I help you? Can I help you? I'm being tapped on the arm. Hi. Hello. Attention has been requested. I'm being tapped on the arm by a paw because somebody wants undivided attention. Ma'am? Ma'am, I cannot just sit here and pet you. It's a craft stream, not a Chica stream. And now that we've taken the plunge, it will be much less stressful for the next cuts. Oh, no you don't. Oh, no you fucking don't. What do I have that I can smack you with? Earwig. Not about to have that crawling all over my material. No, sir. Though, not as bad as silverfish or cockroaches. It is very surreal to actually be doing this. In a good way. In a good way. Chica. No, ma'am. No. You cannot lay on that stuff. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I have to be a mean old mom and not let you lay on that stuff. This is the one time. Look at that. God. I do want to take some of the scrap material from this to put together a really nice cushion for her Raven's mobile habitat, as she keeps putting it. It's his cage. It's his cage to like carry him around because she wants to go, Sybil this is, wants to go to a couple of, oh, for anybody wondering, by the way, I am not worrying about pattern matching at all with this. This is a very full skirt, so if at any point seam lines are visible, I may worry about it for the bodice because much more of the seaming on that will be visible, but for the skirt I'm not going to worry about it because none of the seam lines should be immediately visible to anybody looking at the garment, especially with everything else that'll be going on with Sybil's garb while she's wearing it. Waistband! This is fusible interfacing, which will be attached inside the front edges, the front split edges of the overskirt, as well as inside the waistband. 2 3-inch wide strips. I will cut one more strip that is 5 inches wide, which will go inside our waistband. Someone seems to think that if the ironing board comes out, it's specifically for her to perch on. I have work to do. I just got my sewing machine back today. It came back a week early, so I'm very excited for that. So now the first step is to apply interfacing to the front edges of the overskirt on the inside. Fold over a 5/8 seam allowance over that, and then fold it over again the full amount, the full width of the interfacing strips to fully enclose the interfacing. This is to stiffen the front and give it a bit more body and help it lay as flat as possible in the finished garment. So that's what we're gonna do. I have 2 3-inch wide strips of interfacing that are about the same length as this rectangular panel here. I'm gonna measure 5/8 of an inch in and line the interfacing down the length of the skirt panel and press it on. I'll probably go get a strip of muslin to use as a press cloth over the interfacing, just so that I'm not applying too much heat to either this material, which is polyester, or the interfacing. You're supposed to use a press cloth with interfacing. But of course my camera needs to charge before I do too much else. I'll get one strip pressed on while it's charging and hold off on doing anything else until y'all can see it.
Not with the fucking tongue again, my man.
There's the interfacing pressed to the inside, and I've got the other one done hanging on the gate back there. I'm going to take these to my machine and fold over and stitch down the 5/8 seam allowance, and then fold them over again to enclose the 3 inches and stitch it down one more time. I have blue top thread and black bobbin thread, but now that Jerome has been serviced and is back home, I will actually be able to wind some fresh bobbins as I work through this project, which is a nice thing to know. Let's go sit and start with some stitching. As a quick note for folding over these edges, I'm using the selvage edge for the 2 front pieces as my frontmost edge. So one quick thing to note is I am not including the like fuzzy bit of the selvage in my measurement. I'm actually starting at where the solid material starts, below that fluffy cutoff edge. So that is how I am measuring. Your fabric may be different if you have something that's a little bit less fluffy or whatever the case may be. Is a stitch down seam allowance. So next is to fold this over 3 more inches to fully enclose the interfacing and stitch it again. And there is a stitch down flush, flat front edge. So now that I have the front edges folded over and sewn twice, the next thing is to attach the side front gores to the front panels. And I am making the pocket slit openings in the skirt so that I can construct a couple of, at least one, tie-on pocket for Sybil in order that she can carry a few light things under her skirt a bit more discreetly, and she'll be able to reach them without having to pull the front opening back and expose under layers. And after thinking about it and looking at the layout of the finished mock-up, I think that Miss Anderson's original call for the pocket slits to be between the front panel and the side front gore was the better option. The side seam between the front gores and the back gores does also make sense, but placement-wise, at least for Sybil, I think it'll be a little bit more comfortable to reach into the slightly more forward openings as opposed to all the way to the side, especially because some of the things that are going to be fastened on her belt or around her waist might impede getting to those side openings easily. So putting it at side front instead, essentially where a princess seam would fall in more modern clothing terms, makes more sense. So the pattern suggests measuring 6 inches down from the waistline fold line. The waist fold is 2 inches down from the top. So you just measure 8 inches down from the top, which I'm going to mark with pin number 1 here. And I'm doing it a little bit backward because when you pin perpendicularly, it is better to have the pointy bit of your pin toward the presser foot as it moves along than to have the head toward the foot, so that you're not pushing the pin tighter and tighter into the fabric if you accidentally knock into it while you're sewing. So that is issue number 1, and thus, because I'm going to be, like, the fabric's going to be going this way and the presser foot this way when I sew, so having the pin head to the right-hand side off the edge of the fabric, because this edge will be following the seam allowance markings on the machine, having it to this side makes it much more easy for the presser foot and the needle to miss the pin head and for me to pull it out if I need to. But since this is marking a start and stop point, I do not want to actually pull this out until I'm done. So we measure 8 inches down and mark that, and then measure another 6 inches down from there, which is here. I already have a second pin over here. I will mark that with this pin. And already I really like how thick this material is, because due to the nature of it being not just a jacquard but also a brocade, it is actually 2 layers of material in one fabric. This dark blue material is the main weave, and then this shinier exterior is the brocade part. But there we have the top and bottom points of our pocket opening marked. I will do this on the other side as well, but I just wanted to show it on this one since I'm doing this one first. I am going to start at the hem, which is off the desk, and work my way up to this point, and I will go back and forth, stopping at this pin a few times just to reinforce this area, and then I will pull it off the machine, come up here and put the back of the presser foot at this pin, go back and forth a couple times and stitch the top section. After I finish the seams and get this folded open, I am also going to horizontally reinforce where the stitching starts and stops on either end of this, just to be really, really sure it's strong, because I still need to fix Alice's pocket in her skirt. We're gonna get this stitched, and I will show you the final result afterwards. Going to stitch down the seam allowances to hold them down, and it does instruct that at the pocket opening, which you can see there, that you should fold the raw edge under and hem stitch it to the fabric. I'm just going to go ahead and machine stitch it, because with the dark thread that I am using, I do not think it will be that noticeable from the outside that there is an extra stitch, especially when it's caught up in all of the ruffles of the full skirt. So we're going to stitch the seam allowance down from the inside and then attach the other 2 front pieces together and do the same thing. I got the front pieces all put together, so now the next step is to do the same thing with the back. Attach the back gores to the back sections, do the center back seam, and then the 2 side seams. actually so you guys can see what the heck I'm talking about. So here's where we sit. It's a little after midnight at this point, but here's the two front panels, and the back is also pinned on. I have it very crudely, just like sort of pleated with the pins at the waist. Obviously there's no undergarments to give it its shape, and the two side seams are not done yet, and I still need to stitch down the seam allowance for the center back seam. This is where we sit. I'm pretty happy with it so far. I am a dumb, and I made the mistake of not extending the side gores out the same distance that the bottom went. So we will do what we can with what we have. We may just end up with a very narrow hem, and I may use some sort of bias binding or some sort of trim to help with being able to properly, securely hem the material at the bottom. But here you can see is one of the pocket slits. I'm actually pretty happy with that placement. I think that'll be perfect. So I will be developing at least one pocket that will tie on underneath here, if not a pair of pockets like I did for Alice. That will probably be one of the very last things that I do though, just because it's not necessary for this to be able to be wearable. But yeah, this is where we sit. We will do the last two vertical seams and they'll stitch down the last of the seam allowances in the morning, and then we start pleating. We do have to do the waistband first, so I will be making a stop at Joann on the way home from bringing my boyfriend to work to see if they have anything that works as a stiffener for a fabric belt in order to properly do the waistband, because I found my heavyweight interfacing and my buckram, so I need to use that instead of the lightweight, but that's still not really going to be stiff enough, and I don't know where my craft stabilizer went, so I either need more of that or something stiffer. I almost wonder if I should use like one of the like really simple, not super expensive like costume leathers from Yaya Han's line or something to get it really stiff. We will see. I just want it as sturdy as possible to be able to hold the weight of this skirt and everything that will be over it, namely the belt and chatelaine and other accessories that I'm planning. So far so good. I love the way this material is draping. Like it looks so good, and I really cannot wait to see it over the foundation garments. It's gonna be so good. It is the next day. I have the center back seam allowance stitched down. So now we are going to do the two side seams, the last two vertical seams. So as with every other section, just gonna line up the two edges and with the right sides together, pin them, stitch them. I will go press them, and I've been using a big piece of muslin as a press cloth because I don't want to risk that somehow the iron does anything weird to the material on the outside. Butterfly! And then we will stitch down those seam allowances as well. We will fold over, and I believe I might baste as well, the top 2 inches down to the inside. And then we will prep the waistband, which I did get some commercial like nylon or polyester. This is probably nylon, like webbed belting. I thought this wasn't going to be stiff enough, but this feels pretty damn stiff. This is 1.5 inches wide, which is the intended width of my final waistband. So I think this paired with the heavyweight interfacing and possibly a strip of buckram just for some extra sturdiness will be fine to keep the waistband nice and stiff. This is only a yard, which is more than I should need. The final waistline measurement should be about 32 inches. But yeah, we do side seams, prep a waistband, and then we will sit and hand sew some cartridge pleats, sew on a waistband, which also has to be done by hand, and sew on 2 hooks, which is also handwork. So side seams and waistband are the last 2 things with the machine, other than hemming, but I won't be able to do the hem until tomorrow or possibly Monday morning because it will need to hang overnight, preferably 24 hours before we hem it to make sure it's long enough and has like done any of the stretching that needs to be done. Let's do our side seams. I had to fight with the materials a little bit, but I have the waistband all folded and pinned together and ready to stitch. I have heavyweight interfacing pressed onto the inside of this material, and I have a layer of buckram and then the belting folded up in here. and unfortunately the ensemble wasn't really wanting to press very well, so I just have it held in place with pins as best as I was able to do. And so now I'm going to very carefully, I'm going to turn my stitching speed on my machine down to its slowest, just so I can't go too fast and somehow risk my needle or my machine. I'm gonna do normal stitching, and I'm just gonna stitch very close to the edge, starting at this end, pivot all the way down the length of it, pivot again, and then come up this way, just to stitch this closed, and then we will go lay out the skirt and start marking for the cartridge pleats. Is our waistband all stitched up. There's an up close look at it there. So you can see the stitching line. My threads are dark enough and close enough to the color of the material that you can't really make it out too terribly much. And once everything's put together on the actual garb, especially since this is a waistband, the bodice is gonna go over this, that won't be visible in the final ensemble. So waistband done, now it's time for marking and hand sewing.
Being taps on it, I'm not gonna have you roll just for consistently staring.
Are you sure?
Yeah. You cover your door.
Could try the door.
It opens 40, yeah, easily.
Okay.
Just dart past. As Neela's standing there.
This week has been difficult to get up and get things done, but I am pushing through as best I can. We have the waistband done, the hook's on. You will have seen some of that hand sewing. Last thing is to hem. We got the hem folded up. You can actually kind of see in the background. It's washed out because of the sunlight hitting my sewing machine, because it's afternoon sun and we're in autumn proper now, so the sun's gonna start setting faster. There we go. That's better lighting. You can see my form back here. I got all of the bottom pieces basically put on the form to double check the hem pinning and make sure it was as even as possible, because the form doesn't squish like a human body, so there's no point putting the shift and the pair of bodies onto it. But I've gotten the hem repinned. I'll pan this down so you can see. There's one end, and I have finally acquired myself some pinking shears. So I'm gonna go through and trim this down to be 1 inch wide, the folded up bit to be no more than 1 inch wide all the way around, just to reduce all of this excess. And then we are going to stitch the hem down, and I am not worried about the stitching being visible because it's away at the bottom. This is basically a floor length skirt, and I am possibly going to be putting a line of embellishment along the stitching anyway, which will be hand sewn on, and it will cover any top stitching that is visible. That is the plan. We're gonna trim this, stitch it, and the skirt is done for now. Done. She has been hemmed. She is good to go. I do still need to hem the forepart, but I will worry about that in a moment. The overskirt is done. I don't have the shift or the pair of bodies on the form at the moment. I just did up the skirt bits so that you could see, so that I could fix up some of the hemming folding, and then so that you could see the skirt at the very least is done. The lower layers are done. So now we are going to move on to the partlet, which is a small underlayer that fills in the gap created by the pair of bodies and shift neckline. Creates a
a slight bit of more modesty in the finished ensemble. And then we move on to bodice and sleeves. We have 4 more pieces before Sybil is officially wearable as garb. I have other pieces that I'm going to do to finish the look, but she will be wearable with 4 more pieces, and I am so excited for Sybil to be able to start walking around and interacting with people out in the world instead of just on the other side of an internet video screen. I will have Sybil here tomorrow to show off the overskirt along with the rest of the ensemble, and I will have the 4-part hemmed by then, but I'm gonna go get some other work done since this week I didn't really get much posted for you guys, so I'm gonna get the ball rolling on some other stuff to hopefully create more of a buffer so that I hopefully don't fall behind again like this. But yeah, we have a skirt here. I'll turn it around, and there is the back. Gosh, it looks so pretty. I cannot wait to see this worn and walking around out in the actual world. And I've also noticed, I think my form is starting to lean the same way that my last one did. I think she's sitting crooked now. So might need to invest in a better form again, but that is for another day. Skirt's all done.
Once again, my fine friends and companions and viewers alike. We have now the completed overskirt. As you can see here, glistening in the sun, it fits wonderfully. Alirien and I have already discussed that we need to add some sort of connection on the inside here to keep it tethered to the forepart so that it all will stay together in the front. However, I am very impressed and ecstatic to have the finished skirt, and this means of course that all of these lower parts are complete and we can now move on to completing my upper half, and I cannot be more elated for the rest of this process. Alirien has expressed concern and nervousness in regard to the bodice and the sleeves, but I have assured her that I am merely eager to see the completed result, and I am not quite so persnickety as those in higher social brackets than I. If I were perhaps a duchess or the queen herself, God's willing or forbid, I would of course have much more direct say in just how precise everything is constructed. However, very few will see any of this quite so close enough to have any judgment, and if they do cast judgment, well, my family is no stranger to judgment and criticism. It will not be the first, and it certainly will not be the last. But I am very happy with this finished skirt, and I am even happier that thou now may see it as well. And we are of course excited for the next piece, which should be the partlet to help create a bit more modesty to my décolletage here. I am also quite pleased at having pockets, so I can spirit away a few things underneath the skirt that I might need throughout the day. Once again, we thank thee ever so much for joining us here and keeping track of our process through these missives. We do hope thou hast enjoyed this newest entry, and that thou wouldst use the various avenues to show thy love for the series and this particular entry. If thou wouldst see more of the journey of creating my garb, there is a playlist. I still do not know what that word means, so I'm just going to say a collection of all of Alirien's sewing adventures located in the cards and in the description. We do hope thou wouldst subscribe if thou hast not done so already, and that thou wouldst alert our couriers to keep thee informed of every new entry into Alirien's myriad adventures in sewing and game playing, etc., etc. If thou wouldst follow more of Alirien's adventures in other social circles, thou may find a Linktree portal in the description to find her Instagram, Book of Faces, and the like. I know not what I say. I hope thou understand understands these words I speak, because I still have no clue. As ever, we would give a special huzzah to Alirien's coven of patrons who continue to be the biggest supporters, and if thou, dearest viewer, wouldst join their ranks, again check that Linktree portal in the description for her Patreon, which begins at $1 per month. Gramercy again, keep thine eyes peeled for our courier's arrival with the next entry in the series, and we shall see thee all again very soon. Anon, friends, and keep aiming, our loves.